Hello, friends. Today's topic is contract and essential elements of contracts and various kinds of contracts. So, what is meant by contract? So, we have a complete act, Indian Contract Act 1872, talks a lot about contracts and different types of contracts, enforceability, all these things. So, before we get into the definition of contract, let's talk about offer and agreement. So these two are simple, self-explanatory to explanatory statements. One person offers something and another person agrees to do something. It can be a person selling his house or a person giving some money or something like that. So when offer, a person made an offer and another person accepted that offer plus acceptance is called as agreement. When an agreement which is enforceable by law is called a contract. As per Indian Contract Act, an agreement which is enforceable by law is called a contract. And an agreement to become a contract, it must be made by free consent of parties. Free consent means without any undue influence, without any coercion, without any fraud, misrepresentation. It must be made by free consent of the parties who are competent to contract. Competent to contract means uh, two parties are of sound mind. They're not lunatics and they are majors. They're not minors. And the consideration is lawful. Lawful consideration means the consideration means something in return. Lawful consideration means which is allowed in the court of law. Taking bribe is not allowed in the court of law. I'm just giving an example. So for a lawful consideration and with a lawful object, here I'll give you an example. Selling a cycle or a vehicle to one person to another person is lawful because he has complete ownership or possession of that property. So he can do that. And it should not be explicitly declared void by the act. So the lawful object should not be explicitly declared void by the act. So this is about contract. Let's talk about essential elements of a contract. Yeah, we discussed this. The first one, offer and acceptance. I'll give you an example here. A person A wants to sell his house to B, where B also accepted it. A offered his house for 5 lakh rupees, and B also accepted it. And it is not legal. It is not illegal. They can go with the offer and acceptance, and they can do that. And second one, intention to create legal relationship. That means whenever there is a whenever there is an offer and acceptance, a proposal by one party to enter into agreement with another, intending to create a legal obligation upon acceptance. So this is for legal relations. And the third one is lawful consideration. Consideration means something in return, something of value exchanged between the parties, which can be in the form of goods, money, services, or a promise to act, or refrain from doing. So all these things comes under lawful consideration. So this consideration must be legal and not involve any act prohibited by law. Okay, and the fourth one is capacity to the contract is very important. Capacity again divided into three or four subtypes. First one, competence. So the parties must be legally competent to enter into contract. That means age of majority. So 18 years. They must have attained 18 years or above when they are planning to come into any contract. And they are of sound mind. They should be having sound mind and not disqualified by law. See? Not disqualified by law. So generally, any contract entered into by a minor is generally voidable at the option of the minor. And the fifth one is free consent. Free consent. So consent obtained without coercion. undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, or mistake. See, coercion is nothing but using threats or force to obtain consent. Gundagiri. Mhm. So free consent. And the sixth one is lawful object. So for any contract, the object must be lawful. For example, a contract for the sale of illegal substances, marijuana, drugs, all these things are void as the object is unlawful. Okay, let's talk about the various types of contracts. First one is express contract. So the agreements are express contracts are also agreements where the terms are explicitly stated, written or orally. So the contract terms are very clear, expressed. That's why these types of contracts are called express contracts. And the second one is implied contracts. Here, the contract is enforceable by agreement is enforceable by law. Contract is also there, but no clear terms defined in the contract. So, for example, uh, when a patient visits a doctor, there is an implied contract to pay for medical services rendered. Clear? There is no actual written or oral statement, but whenever a patient visits a doctor, there is an implied contract. Okay. And next, bilateral contracts. Uh, I'll try to give you an example. A person is a seller of televisions, and he also takes care of the delivery part. So now the person selling a TV to another person. Now this is a bilateral contract, like both have to do something from their end. The first one will deliver the goods. Upon receiving the goods, the other person, the receiver, will pay the money. This is called a bilateral contract. And the fourth one is unilateral contracts. Unilateral contracts, or I'll try to give you an example. Just assume a person lost his pet. He announced in the newspaper saying, Whoever brings my pet back, I'll give them 1,000 rupees. Now, assume a random person found the pet and he delivers back to the original owner and he receives 1,000 rupees. So, this is unilateral contract. And the fifth one is void contracts. Agreements that are not enforceable by law from the outset are called void contracts. Lack of essential elements like lawful object or consideration, and contracts involving illegal activities, and contracts to commit a crime. All these are examples of void contracts. And last one, voidable contracts. So, voidable contracts means they like agreements that are initially valid but may be voided by one or more parties due to certain legal defenses. I'll give you an example. A contract entered into under duress can be voided by the coerced party. So that means the voidable contracts are initially valid, but after some time they are not valid. That is voidable contract. Yeah, thank you. Please subscribe Nyaya Vidya.